everyone. This is the World of Paleoanthropology. Seth here. Today we have a very special guest, actually one of my former professors. Why don't we let him introduce himself?
Hello, everybody. I'm Andrew Kinkella, and I am a full-time professor of archaeology at Moorpark College in Southern California, and I specialize in the ancient Maya.
Wonderful. And let me just say, one of your classes was, although I had to take it twice, was one of my favorites that I've had, and I really like how diverse your teaching goes, from like stone tool making to, I remember you telling stories about cruising like from in like the San Francisco Bay, and like just all you've led a very interesting career from my understanding so far. How
I've
did it
been,
start?
yeah, sure. So how did my career start and all that kind of good stuff? So really, there's a lot here. So there's sort of the stuff you enjoyed, and then how did my career start? So first, in terms of my class, thank you very much for enjoying the class and saying nice things. That makes me feel really good, and that's what it's all about. There's really two things that I try to do for students, and the first thing is to get them interested with the big stories of archaeology, and also any sort of dynamic things that have happened to me in the field, because we all like to joke along about how bad my day was that one time in the jungle or something. I think it brings it home. People don't want to just hear about treasure or something, although they're curious about those kind of things. They also want to hear about the human side, like, oh, I guess you were really lonely that time in a tent all by yourself for a week. So that I really enjoy doing that. And then the other side, I really like to give you guys like an appreciation for the skill set of archaeology, so where you get real hands-on experience. Like you brought up the stone tool day, where we take out stone and we try and make a sharp edge, which is hard to make a nice one, but easy to make a sharp one that's going to cut your fingers accidentally. And I don't mind when that happens, because that's a learning experience too. Students are like, damn, obsidian is sharp. So it really brings it home, because people think like, oh, stone tools, well, I guess they're kind of sharp. It's like, no, they're actually sharper than steel. So I in my career, that's what I enjoy doing. And the reason why I do that goes back to what I wanted in archaeology in the beginning, what I wanted to learn, kind of the things that I was interested in. So I try and bring those same sort of things to the students. How this all began was I went to college at UC Santa Barbara. I was originally from the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, and I moved down to Santa Barbara as like an 18-year-old, freshman. And I was originally going to be a drama major, but while I still enjoy drama and did a little bit in that world, I had a couple really dynamic professors in archaeology who sold it, who got me in with the hook. And the first one was Professor Brian Fagan, who taught Intro to Archaeology, the same class you took with me, I took with him. And I loved his stories. I loved it, that he would talk off the top of his head. He was a dynamic public speaker, and he would tell these stories of these things he did. He worked in Africa for a long time, like I think in the late 50s and the 60s, and he would tell these stories about being just in the middle of nowhere in Africa and what that was like. And he would really bring it home, like this is what it's like to be a human being doing this thing in a very far away place, often alone. And I just thought it was fascinating, and the idea that maybe I could do that too, I thought was great. Now, after I took Intro to Archaeology, it wasn't like I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be an archaeologist now. Oh, I know. It definitely got archaeology on the map for me, and the whole traveling thing I just thought was really great. So I was like, even if I don't become an archaeologist, I definitely want to do that travel thing. Like I was also into maybe joining the Peace Corps, or trying to maybe teach English. They would have opportunities to teach English in different countries, or they would even have opportunities for like a semester abroad. And I remember looking into that pretty seriously, until I took a second hook, which was there was a woman at UCSB, Annabelle Ford, and she took undergraduate students with her to work on the ancient Maya in Belize in Central America. So my third year there, yeah, I was a junior, I guess that would be. I spent 3 months in the jungle of Central America, working on a large Maya site. And that was everything it sounds like it was. I mean, it was fantastic. And after that, I was like, okay, I think I want to do this thing, And then I was very serious and very conscious about moving forward with that.
Yeah, that sounds great. And you bring up before we get into what you kind of do now and more of where your focus is, you bring up something that I was actually speaking to my previous guest about, and something I've seen pop up a little more recently again is the peopling of the Americas.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you've heard of this, but in San Diego, at the San Diego Natural History Museum, they have the Centurion Mastodon, which they think, some anthropologists think, show signs of lithic markings on it. And others just say it's naturally occurring.
Right.
But so there's people in San Diego who think humans were here about 135,000 years ago. To me, that seems a little early, but
it's way too early. I know that one. I know that what they found and stuff. And see, one of the big truisms in science is if you're going to make extraordinary claims, you need extraordinary evidence. You just do. And their evidence is not nearly that good. Now, I'm not saying that they might have lucked out and maybe, but this is not a very scientific answer to this, what I'm about to say, but I just don't feel it. It just don't got the vibe. I looked, I haven't seen the stuff in person, but I saw the photos and I was just kind of like, I swear, I don't think it is. I do think it's natural. And you have to, when you do a scientific pursuit like this, if it's archaeology, you have to be happy to be hard on yourself like that and be like, wait, is this just natural? Because it's very easy to be human in these moments and be like, well, I think it is. I mean, it could be. Wouldn't it be cool if it was? I mean, and then I found a thing that's 120,000 years old and I'm like the first one. So you know what? I really think it's true. No, wait and be honest. It's hard to do. We're all guilty of this from time to time, but long story short, yeah, I don't think they got it. I don't see it. I don't see it at all. So, I wish them well. I hope I'm wrong, because that would be a better story, but I don't see it. I don't think they have it. And, as you bring up peopling of the New World, I would say in archaeology as it's practiced worldwide, I think possibly the hardest question to answer is, how was the New World peopled? It's very difficult. And I guarantee you a decade from now, there'll be totally new research, there'll be totally new dates, there'll be totally new stuff, because there's certain aspects of the data of that don't quite make sense 100%. I'm not saying the data is bad. I think there's more to find that we haven't quite found yet. And it would answer some questions. Currently, just so everyone knows, you can solidly date humans in the New World by about 17,000 years ago or so. So if somebody said 20,000 years ago, that's fine. But if you're arguing 40, if you're arguing 80, I've seen bits and pieces where people argue that kind of stuff, but they don't got it yet. It could change. That could be a thing, but they need a little bit more solid stuff before you can say that. And we can also just be cool with, like, you know what, maybe it was 17,000 years ago. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with it being 17, and that's it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a very interesting site. And I also last week learned about another place in California near us called the Early Man site. Have you heard about that one?
I have.
Can you
the
explain that
Calico,
one to me?
the Calico early man
Yes.
site. If I think that the data on the San Diego one is weak, the early man site is worse. Like the early man site is laughable. Like that you just got to look at it and laugh along. Like they have nothing. Sorry, early man site. Let it go, my friends.
That's what I don't understand. How did Lewis Leaky get so involved?
See, look, he was older by that point. I swear to God, that's the truth. He was older, and Mary Leakey, you got to remember, Mary Leakey was a major player in that, and she really, I don't know their story super well, but I do know that when in doubt, Lewis got a little more credit than he deserved once or twice, and Mary didn't get enough.
Yeah.
I know that Mary at the time was like, Lewis, good God, don't do this, and he was like, Lewis, I know, was like a denizen of the spotlight. He loved, which, who am I to talk? You had my class.
It's something I've noticed in this general field of anthropology.
Yeah, exactly. But so I think he just went towards the spotlight, just like a moth to the flame, and he's like, oh, the early man site. And it's like, no. It's that stuff. It's just, stone will naturally spall off as when weather changes and stuff. And you can, when you're a professional, you can easily tell that kind of stuff. You really can, So the Calico early man site is it's a joke. It's like that. It's like that museum that they have in the Midwest where there's dinosaurs and humans together. It's of that. What's that place called? I forget.
And they have a whole arc, don't they?
Yeah.
They
all
have
the whole thing.
Arc.
Yeah, where the Earth is 6,000 years old, and
I know the guy is his name literally just left my brain.
I know.
Yeah, but they have that whole museum, and it's just
So the Calico early man sites like that.
Did you hear for the first time that over 50% of Americans believe? I hate using that word, believe in evolution.
I did. I saw that. And it's great. Like, that's cool. And what people don't realize is that number is actually kind of misleading, because the reality is more people do than that. Because I do know that the number one belief system in America is a belief in both religion and evolution together. So, and it's not, that has not, I think there's even more than 50% there, but even if it's only 51%, whatever, that's good. And I get what you mean about using the word believe. It's like, well, I believe that the Earth is the third planet from the sun. Yeah, the Earth doesn't give a damn what you believe. It's the third planet from the sun, exactly. And the same with evolution. It's the cornerstone of biology, but certain people just don't like it, but it takes time. Whatever. If they're coming in slowly just to get over that hump, well, hey, more power to them. That's great. The come over here, the water's fine. We're happy to have you.
So what do you think of, let's see, I took your class probably 5 years ago. 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Over the last decade, with how many hominin finds we've had, and I'm not talking about finger bones, I'm talking about full species.
Right.
What is your take on where the field is now and where it might be going in the next 10 years?
Hey, Seth, I thought we talked before. You're not supposed to ask me anything too hard to make me look stupid. That's great. It's a great question. That is a massive question, boy.
Yeah, I know, it's a tough one.
In terms of hominid studies are kind of like how I talked about earlier about peopling the New World. It's like the more data you find, the better, and you can find these big new things that really change our understanding of stuff. The short answer is there'll just be more of it. There will be more and more finds because there are more people on Earth all the time. Like, there's more and more construction, which is devastation, but it also more cleared areas, more people looking in more areas, more people looking in new areas. So you're just going to find more of this stuff, which is great. So I do see, I do think in the next 10 years, I think they'll just be more, and it will give you the cliche of we will know more. Well, I think almost for sure you could say we'll have a better idea of some of the earlier parts of the hominid family tree, like in the Australopithecine area. That's one of those parts that's hard. It's like once you get to around Homo erectus and onward, it gets easier, But
although we since then we found out Florenziensis, Luenziensis,
right,
and obviously Naledi and Sediba, and so it's like, yeah.
I mean, it's awesome. It's a great time for paleoanthropology. I love that stuff. It's a great time to study peopling of the New World. Just because it's hard doesn't make it bad. It's
no.
The new finds are like, it's cool. It adds some pizzazz, when these new finds come. They're very exciting. So I do think there'll be more. I do think in that, that 2 to 4 million year old bracket, that to me is that real tough zone.
Yeah.
I think they'll shed some light on it. I think it'll make a little more sense, but then there'll be more. And then they'll ask more questions. They're always going to push back stuff like the earliest stone tools, that
which
kind of
getting pushed back.
Yeah, all the time. For me, teaching that stuff every semester, I'm like, oh, wait, and I have to change it in my lecture. I'm probably behind as it is. Because it's so fast.
I was when I took your class really appreciative, because I could tell that you were keeping up to date with what was going on in the world around us. And unfortunately, some of my other anthropology teachers were like teaching stuff from the 80s.
Right.
Which is how a lot of schools work still. But
yeah. I guess I'll pat myself on the back and talk about how great I am yet more. So it's something I take seriously. I want to tell you guys the right thing. And if I don't know, I'll be like, hey, I don't know. I mean, one part of archaeology is the excitement and interest of not knowing, or, going, hey, look, I don't know about this, or my best guess is this currently, again, just like we were talking about peopling of the New World. I'm like, 17,000 is, somewhere around 20. That's what I think is the correct answer these days. But I can be wrong next week. So yeah, I want you guys to have the right information. And also in my personal life, it's like a ton of my friends are archaeologists. A ton of my friends are anthropologists. So I talk to them all the time, and they'll actually know the person who did the dig, so that's nice too. Being in the mix with those people, I just kind of suck it in by osmosis, the recent stuff, So that's my job, to tell you guys that stuff.
No, I think that's awesome. And, at my goal at this moment is to serve as a science communicator as I go through school. But I do plan on getting my PhD in biological anthropology.
I've obviously taught you nothing.
With a focus on cranial morphology.
Oh, right on.
And so I'm doing that, and I'm really excited. But your archaeology class was, no, that's a lie. I did have one bio-anth class at Pierce College before I transferred to Moore Park.
Right.
But your class at Moore Park was my first, and it really did solidify the thoughts I was having from my Bio 101, and it just kind of, and I goofed off too much with my friend in class, so I had to take it again. But even then, it was like, just, this is it. Like, this, there's something about this, that intrigue that I feel like that has not gone away in the last 10 years. This just feeling of trying to learn and do as much as I can in this field. And it's been really interesting how, from what I've read, because at first I started reading, when we're talking more about paleoanthropology, books that are probably 20 or 30 years old now. I mean, they're talking about the hominid gang, the Leakys, like all that.
Mm-hmm.
And what was made clear is that paleoanthropology in particular, and maybe you can tell me if this applies to archaeology as well, can be a very hostile environment. Like notably, I hear it's getting better, but what's your take on that?
Okay, I got two things here. First, I hope you keep your interest in this stuff. It sounds like it's really kind of sparked deep inside, just like it was for me. I'm sitting there in the Maya jungle and I'm like, wow, this is really great. So I hope you keep that. And I hope you keep your focus on like science communicator and communicating to the public. That's so vital, that we communicate to the public using real words, talking in normal way, not a ton of academic jargon and all that stuff. Nothing kills my inner child more than academic jargon. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And so because these stories are so fascinating, and we do the public a great disservice if we don't get it out to them. So, good for you. Not everyone's doing this. You're doing it. So, pat yourself on the back.
It's I'm very surprised, honestly, and proud of where I am at this point.
You should be.
I don't know if you've seen who's been on the interview roster, but
I have.
Some pretty interesting people.
I've seen a few. I was starting to get jealous. I'm like, hey, Seth, come on. Wait, you might be passing me. What do I do?
But yeah, and I'm just amazed that these professors are so willing to open up and talk to you if you just show a little actual interest in what they're doing, because they're so used to droning on to classrooms of people who don't care. You show interest and they never stop talking.
Yes. And people love to talk about themselves. So you just give them a little call, and like, hey, tell me about your thing. And they're like, can I? Sure.
But yes, I am very excited to add you to my collection.
to your roster of all-stars.
I think, you, along with a few other people, have been just so uniquely inspiring. Again, your classes really got my feet firmly on the ground, but just like you said, you started in drama. It shows through your teaching, and that's great. I love it. But it was fun. It was really fun. And there's other professors that I've contacted that I thought I'd never hear from, and then I get an email, and it's like, oh, okay, you want to be on? You're asking me to interview you? Okay. Right. And then there's something real crazy. I'll tell you when we're done recording.
All right.
Because I can't tell anyone yet. But
that's okay.
So back to you.
Yes, it's all about me. What? I can't believe you were talking about yourself for a minute. Please, I have a PhD.
Love that.
Wait, I do want to get back. I didn't talk about how brutal and harsh the anthropological world is. I forgot to answer your question on that. So the answer is yes. Yes to all. But academics in general is like that. So I don't think that paleoanthropology is any worse. It's just all the same. Like, and it's a combination of sometimes what you hear is honestly worse than it really is, because you're only going to hear the extremes. And in my experience, I've only had a handful of encounters that were really wild. Usually it's, even if you disagree, you're usually at least enough of adults to just disagree in adult fashion. But it is an aspect of academia, whatever you may be in, where I think that people in it get made like that because they become grad students, and then they like have this like idea that they need to push forward, and it's their dissertation, and other people say they're wrong. So then they double down and they just keep on it, and then they get bitter. And then when you even just in discussions go, hey, have you ever thought of this? They go, no, and they sort of strike back, and you're like, what? I just, it's because of what it's like in the academic world that you tend to get that. So I wouldn't dissuade anybody from going into it because of that stuff. Because if you're an adult, it's fine. You'll just every so often you'll meet these people who are way out there, and you're like, okay, well, go on with your bad self, my friend, and you'll be fine. If for some horrendous reason you got like an advisor who hated you or something, or became jealous, that happens sometimes, but that's rare. So just it's okay. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine.
And then following along with that, speaking again, well, actually, I'll ask you this first. So I know it changes, I assume, by country, but how does the ownership of artifacts get decided?
Okay, yeah, another massive question. The short answer is that you're right. Every country is different, but the other part of the short answer is any artifacts found in that country are automatically the property of that country. Like if I find a Maya pot in Belize, that is the property of the government and the people of Belize. That's what you would say, right? And that's natural, and that's as it should be. And I think 9 times out of 10, that's just what you're going to see. Now you can export artifacts as long as you get the right paperwork and stuff. I've done that before. Because you're going to study them, you're going to do carbon-14 dating or something, and you just do it on the level. You like fill out the paperwork and they okay it, and you have these government forms, and you have to go through airport security with that stuff, which I do not recommend. But even
they just few skulls through the airport,
dude, they're gonna put you in the little room in like 2 seconds, and you're like, dude, I have everything. Look, here's the paperwork. You just got to be ready. You got to get to the airport extra early that day. So no, that's the short, easy answer. There are people out there, who think finders keepers and all that, which is not true.
That is where I'm going next.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you what your opinion of was, and I'm not going to name any names, but let's just say Sahelanthropus chilensis in a box for dozens of years, and no one gets to look at it. Like,
right? See, that's those kind of examples are kind of paleoanthropology or archaeology at its worst. Luckily, that's not the norm. But every so often, you'll have this thing where somebody has it for some weird reason. They collected it. They didn't realize it was anything. It got exported because it was, it didn't seem to be anything. And then in the lab, they're like, oh my God, it's a thing. But then they're disingenuous because usually when you export, it's for an amount of time. Like if I export something from Belize, I have it for a year. And then they're like, within a year, you need to return this. And that's cool. And it's easy. But they... I don't know their story well, so I don't want to overstep my bounds, but I would just say in general, those kinds of stories, they just, a term I use all the time, they just need to act in good faith. It's easy. You just act in good faith, and as long as both sides do it and everything's cool, it's like, oh, can I take this out for this amount of time? Oh, okay. Well, I'll bring it back. Oh, okay. Just follow that. No, it's not right if it's in, a shoebox under your bed or something. Or in archaeology, a lot of times people get what we call my site-itis, where, oh, that's from my site. Nobody else gets to study it. It's my site. And it's like, no, dude, you haven't done anything in 30 years. So you might, the door needs to open. It's a mild to moderate problem, I would say, in archaeology. It's not every site you go to, but I've seen it once or twice in my career.
Okay. So you are, as you said, you're a professor at Moore Park College and the head of the anthropology department. Do you see, did you even have possibly plans to go back to South America and COVID got in the way, or do you plan to go back soon or anything like that?
Yeah. So yes to all. So first, in behind the scenes in my archaeology career, I really have kind of two focuses, or foci. I don't know. Two areas that I look at. Obviously, the Maya stuff, which is what every time I work there, the Maya in Belize, it's like coming home to mother. It's kind of like, you know, the mothership. I've done it forever and ever, and I love it. I love the jungle. I love the jungle, man. Look at my background, huh? This is a picture. This is actually a picture I took. This is a picture I took in
awesome.
Belize.
Yeah.
But I also work with my students locally on local California archaeology, so I do some of that too. Now, COVID shut all of it down.
Right.
And one very fortuitous thing with the COVID deal was I got back in touch with Annabelle Ford, the original professor I worked with at UCSB, because she wasn't doing anything either. And so, you know, we're all trapped at home. And I got back in touch with her. I hadn't talked with her in years. And I was like, hey, Annabelle, you know, what if we look at some of the old data from what we did in the past? And she agreed. And the two of us have been working together a lot over COVID. I see her almost every week. And it's been a really great time to look over some of your old data, because in archaeology, classically, a lot of times you're always behind with some of the lab stuff, because there's a lot to do in there. And so it's actually been very fulfilling for me to go back and work on the original project I worked on. I saw paperwork that I filled out when I was like 21. It was like, oh my God, like I could look at it as a different person, you know. I could be like, and I was like, this guy did okay. Oh, good for him. He did okay. You know,
not the best, but okay.
Yeah, no, it was fine. You get over the hump. And my drawings were quite good, I'll have you know. Yeah.
Oh, well,
deal with it.
I can't draw at all.
Deal with it. Like Andrew Kinkella from 1993 drew a decent plan view. He did. So that's been very very satisfying. Something that's really great to happen when you can't travel. And I don't have immediate plans to go back to Belize, but I'm sure in, you know, like again with the Delta variant and stuff.
Right.
I would highly doubt I would go this summer, but maybe the next one after that. Mm-hmm. So it's still in my wheelhouse, definitely.
Okay, cool. That is awesome. That is one thing that I think is sad when I see a professor who used to be so enthralled in something, and then they themselves stop doing research and they fall off their own wagon, and then they kind of just like, why are you still teaching? I don't know. I think you really need to be enthusiastic to be dealing with humans and human culture.
Right.
So
yeah. What's so funny in anthropology, the study of people, sometimes you find people in the discipline where you're like, why are you here? You seem to know nothing about people. But it's the big joke in anthropology. But I agree with you. I do think that, I mean, just people in general, as we all get older, I'm not here to say that all archaeologists need to go swashbuckling through the jungle 4 months every summer or something. But it's much more what you said about still being enthused. So somebody could not go to the field for like a decade, but they could still be totally enthused with it, you know. So that I don't fault anyone if they're not going every year, but yeah, they got to be enthused. They got to, and honestly, it's you guys help me out a lot, the students, you know, because it's like a parent-child thing. Like I get re-interested because I see you guys interested. You know, just like with a little kid, it's like, oh yeah, SpongeBob is fun to watch. You know, you get re-enthused, and so that's something that you guys give me totally. You know, so it is a two-way street. That's the deal.
That is, I don't think I've heard a professor put it exactly that way before, but I think that is a very true and meaningful way to describe it. And I'm happy that we do, and I assume on other professors as well, have that effect.
It does definitely.
And, you know, I don't think I mentioned, but when I do get my PhD, I want to become a professor and do research. So going down that road, so that's where the SciComm is going. And then, so where do you think, oh, here's a better one. Okay, I ask everyone this. What is your favorite hominin besides Homo sapiens?
Oh yeah. What a cop out. I'm not gonna do that one. Ooh, you know what? It's Homo erectus. Homo erectus is my favorite hominin because Homo erectus is like a world of firsts. I love his stories. I love the Eugene Dubois story of the fight. Speaking of keeping stuff forever, being all bitter. The Eugene Dubois story of finding the first Homo erectus skull is hilarious. It's so human and so fallible. A great story. Yeah. And then just some of the fossils that go with it, Turkana boy, just so cool, so interesting. Oh my God, they're tall all of a sudden, there's these big changes. Ashland hand, who doesn't like an Ashland hand X? Come on. They're so interesting. I remember I really had an archaeological moment with one of my old professors at UC Riverside. He worked in Jordan for years on Homo erectus, and he had a collection of Ashland hand axes. And I remember being in his office, and he let me do this. He's like, yeah, Andrew, you can go check this out. I was in his office alone. He had those really awesome old school, really nice shelves with like the wooden, like how they roll out and there's felt in them and stuff. Like super nice, super expensive. I remember rolling one out, and it was just full of Ashland hand axes, like perfectly laid there. And I remember picking one up. It fell perfectly in my hand. And I was like, oh my God, this is 500,000 years old. I'm getting goosebumps right now talking about it. Like, it was so cool. It just how it fit. And oh man. So yeah, Homo erectus is my favorite hominid for my own personal story and for the cool backstories for it.
Yeah, it truly is something. I have not yet been exposed to legitimate material like that hand axe, but like, for example, my partner and I went to the Los Angeles Natural History Museum last week, and let me just say their human origins department needs a update. But
I think they're working on it.
They had Lucy and they had Turkana boy, like the whole skeleton laid out like they would be if they were the actual fossils. And it was just, there was something so special about actually just seeing the fossils laid out in the way that they would be. Like, I have a collection of 3D printed skulls that I'm using, and I plan to do a lot with those later on this show. But to see the whole skeleton, it was just, I had shows like you explained too. Like, it's just,
there is something about that tactile, in-person sort of thing. You can't replace it. I think everyone's noticing that in the time of COVID and in the time of, just taking classes online or whatever. You can't replace that. I do have to give a special shout out to Professor Messenger, to Rachel Messenger in the bioanthro department at Moore Park. She's very good at getting all that stuff. Like, we as a community college have a way better collection of the cast material than honestly than most of the 4 years, and I've seen them, and we're winning.
I do remember.
It's good.
When I took bioanth there, they had everything. Honestly, were they from bone clones?
Yep. It's all from bone clones.
I know exactly how expensive that collection was.
And that's something that we as a department, take very consciously. So I always put money aside for bone clones, and that took years. That took decades, to sort of slowly year by year. But it's because of what you're saying. It's because you can't replace that tactile experience. You can't replace seeing it 3D right there, especially like the Homo erectus full skeleton. You're like, wow, it really. Even for somebody who doesn't give a damn about anthropology, when they see that stuff, it's intrinsically interesting.
Oh, definitely. So, we're gonna start to kind of end here because I don't want to keep you too long.
I have very important thoughts to think. I am a PhD. It's just lots of important thoughts.
So I will give you the floor right now, and you can. And I have one more question, and then I'll give you the floor.
That's fine.
What would your top piece of advice I'm sure you know this because you probably give it. What would your top piece of advice to students entering either anthropology or archaeology and are serious? Like not just
Right.
the like what's your tip for the serious people?
Ooh, that's a good one. I actually don't get this that much. And I know what you mean. Like that, like look, I'm already in it. Like I'm at the dance. Like, what are your top, you know what? And this is gonna feel sort of touchy-feely, but watch this. It's know thyself. And what I mean by that is you could say, yeah, I want to be an anthro major or I want to be an archaeologist or whatever, but there's a lot of different little rooms there. There's a lot of different variety. And you have to know where your strengths are or where you're going to focus. You got to be honest. And that is so difficult, especially for young people, right? Like for me, to use myself as an example, my strength is in talking to the general public, right? You know, you're like this, hey, what can I say? That's what I do. That's what I enjoy. You know, I get like that jazzes me up and I take it seriously. I want to be able to tell stories of the past like well and hook the audience, right? That's my strength. Now I can research. I've done it. And I've written, you know, like academic papers and all that. And so I can do it, but that's not my selling point, right? If you're going to hire me, you put me in front of an audience. That's where I shine. You know,
that's why you have the lecture hall and not the other anthro teachers.
Yeah. You know, it's that, but that's what you use. You play to your strengths, right? And so that's what I would say for everybody getting in. Make a list to yourself of your strengths and your weaknesses, you know, and think seriously about what's your end point with all this? Do you need a PhD? Can you do it with only a master's? Oh, how dirty. But you know, and obviously I joke in a lot of ways, man, if you can do it with only a master's, get only a master's, you know. Think about how much money it might cost you to do these kind of things. Where do you want to go? You know thyself, know your strengths, see your endpoint. The scariest ones when people tell me about this stuff is they're just like, I want to be a professor. And I can just see the blank in their eyes where they haven't thought about it. Like where, how, you know, are you a community college professor guy like me who's always in front of the public, or are you like I believe it's an R1, the high research institutions where you're like just in the lab all the time and you barely see anyone? Are you a pure researcher who isn't even really a professor? You're like, you live on grants and stuff, you know. There's so many. Are you a CRM archaeologist? Or do you work for local businesses making sure that the new building being built downtown, they don't destroy a Native American burial site, right? There's all these places. And you want to be honest with what makes you happy, what your strengths are, you know, and that will serve you better than anything else. I swear. You don't just need to blankly be a professor at a UC school without really thinking about it. That is not necessarily the route to happiness. Trust me. You know, you want to know thyself.
I think that is excellent advice. And if you have anything you would like to add or say about anything, I will give you the floor.
All right. Well, I think we covered all kinds of interesting stuff here, so I don't have too much, you know, too many bombshells to drop right now. I would say that if people listening to this, if you're interested in getting in touch with me, I have a YouTube channel called Kinkella Teaches Archaeology. And people leave comments in there and stuff, and it's fine. Like I get comments all the time where they're like, hey, I'm a student, I'm just curious about this. You can write it in the comments. I will see those and I'll comment back. Sometimes it takes me a week or two, it depends on when, but that's a really great way to get in touch with me. That's the easiest way. You can also email me at my Moore Park College email address, but the YouTube thing works pretty good, and you can put it under any of the videos there. I'll see it. They pop up when they're new. So that's all I'd really say. And I'd also just have a special shout out to you, Seth. I think this is just really cool what you're doing. I really respect what you're doing. Not everyone's doing it. You're doing it. So I appreciate the work that goes on behind the scenes for this stuff. I appreciate how it feels like you're just kind of taking a step into darkness when you make these kind of things, you're like, is anybody going to watch it? Is anybody going to care? You know, and I think it's awesome. You just have to just keep it up, man. It's really, really great.
Thank you. That means a lot. And one last thing before we end this, and I do want to let you know, I will add the link to your channel in the announcement post for this video, and hopefully we'll get you some traffic that way. But otherwise, you know, I just really want to thank you for coming on. And if there's anything that the world of paleoanthropology can ever do for you, I would be very happy to hear from you. And, you know, it is interesting interviewing a previous professor, but I enjoyed it quite much. So
hey, it was fantastic talking to you, man. It's always very sort of heartwarming, and I know that sounds cliche, but it's true, to see an old student who's being successful in the realm where you taught them stuff. So, you know, it makes me good. It's a festival of happiness all around here, Seth.
Awesome. All right. Well, with that, I will end